Good evening. Welcome to this week's edition of Public Access Public Affairs. My name is Quentin Wiltz with the League of Women Houston Speakers Bureau, and tonight we're going to be talking about the 2016 census test. Harris County has been selected as one of the test centers to conduct the test for the upcoming census. And tonight we have some fabulous guests with us from the U.S. Census Bureau out of the Denver office. To my left, Kathy Lacey is the Regional Director of the Census Bureau Regional for Denver. We have Ms. Teresa Caldaro, and we also have Angeles Ortega with us tonight. And so we're going to be covering a broad base of topics. One of the key things is the census, the test in Harris County. But I'd like to start off by just asking, what does the census do?
What does the census do?
Yeah.
You know, we like to say that we are the fact finders for the nation. So people think that all we do is work in the year that ends in 0, but that's not actually true. We actually have a field staff that works right here in Houston, and that field staff is collecting information for the American Community Survey, which is the long form of the census. So it's that rich characteristic data that you have to have for community planning. But then we're also, when every first Friday of the month, we release the unemployment rates. Well, it's the Census Bureau who goes door to door to collect that information. Health statistics, crime statistics, information that contributes to the Consumer Price Index. So we do a lot every single month.
So not just counting people.
Not just counting people. No, absolutely not.
So, now, could you run us through a bit about, the next upcoming census, right? I'm sure there are steps that you have to take to prepare for the census. So what are you doing now to prepare for that?
Okay, so the actual census occurs in the year that ends in 0.
Okay.
So in between the censuses, since we have one opportunity to get it right, we do smaller tests. So the one that we're doing here in Houston, that we're also doing in LA County, we actually are looking at promoting, how do we promote self-response? So we're looking at what are our cost drivers for a census and how can we decrease the cost of the census for the taxpayers, because taxpayers pay for the census. We want to make sure it's as efficient and as accurate as possible. So this is one of those tests that we'll be doing. We did one in 2015, 2014. We'll be doing another test in 2017, and then what we call an end-to-end test. Now that's where we take all these lessons learned, all these operational control systems, and we actually start from nuts to bolts. Let's do the whole census and make sure everything works before we actually start hitting the field in 2019 with our pre-operation and the actual census in 2020.
So the next census is 2020.
Correct.
And now could you perhaps elaborate why it's important that we conduct a census?
Okay, so it's critically important to the communities. This is the only data that actually goes to every single household. So we represent every single household in the United States in the census data. It is not a sampling, it is an actual count. So our process is that we will be sending something to each household. We'll be asking them to complete it on the internet instead of mailing in a form, but they can do that too. Mm-hmm. They can go online, they can call us, they can mail a form back and make sure that that household is represented. And people think that's it, but that's not it. We're not finished. A census is not finished until we have every household represented in one way or another. And that comes into the most expensive part of a census, and that's where we actually go door to door for those that have not returned their census form, and we make sure with our field staff that we're talking to them and making sure the households are represented.
So we get a lot of things in the mail. So do you have something with us that can show us what we'll be getting?
Here is our 2016 Census test form, and as you can see, it says United States Census Bureau right here. So, and it says, by law, your response is required. But it's pretty big. It's really sticks out. We were doing a press conference on March the 25th, and we actually had one person who lives in the test area. It's not all of Harris County. It's a small portion of Harris County, 225,000 housing units that we have for our particular test. And he had already received his, went online, and took 5 minutes to complete it. How much easier can that be?
I don't know.
I'm telling you.
So, I tried to do a little bit of research, and I think I was talking to you earlier. If you go online, www.census.gov. Correct?
You got it.
And there's a host of information, particularly information about the test that's being conducted. And so I noticed that Harris County, it said the test started on March 21st.
March 21st.
21st.
That's the first day that people could go online and complete their census form on the internet.
Okay.
So we opened an office that's under Teresa in January. So we've actually been on the ground recruiting for the portion of the census where people don't respond, we come and get it. So we've actually been recruiting. So we've actually been on the ground longer, but that's the first day people could self-respond. And that's really what we want to encourage. Harris County is an interesting area. It's got a great deal of diversity. We wanted a large metropolitan area that was quite diverse in language, has varying levels of internet access, and also has a high vacancy rate. So Harris County had all those qualifications. So it really is a fantastic test bed for us to validate some of our assumptions as we move towards 2020.
So you talk about some of the things that make Harris County a perfect test site, and you mentioned the other test site, which is LA County, right? So,
correct.
So there are two testing samples that you're collecting from, Harris County and LA County. And one of the interesting things that we talked about earlier is that Harris County has one of the, if not the largest, population growth rate in the nation. And so with that, wouldn't that pose some difficulties, some challenges? And you mentioned vacancy, so could you kind of elaborate on some of the challenges that you anticipate when you selected Harris County?
Okay, so one of the challenges is the fact that you have new growth. You have people coming into the area. So, but the diversity is one of the largest challenges. So when we talk about new populations, we have to get in there. One, we try to hire so we represent the communities that are on the ground. So trying to go through and recruit people who could speak the languages of the people who are actually in the test area. And it's really interesting, the test area, when you drive down from one end to the other, you see several different, you see English, and you see Chinese, and you see Vietnamese, and various languages as you go through. And we need to make sure in the people that we hire, they can speak those languages. So we actually do want the challenges. So when we get to 2020, then we've already come across these challenges and we know better how to handle them. And recruiting is one of those. So Angeles Ortega is here, and we have another gentleman, Eduardo Getty, who is working with us on the partnership aspect. So how do we create those local partners so that we overcome the fear of actually participating in the census? Recruiting people, like I said, we've been on the ground trying to make sure that the field staff that we actually hire represent the areas that they're going to be working, but it's really sending out that message. This is something safe, it's easy, and it's important.
So you mentioned being more challenges the better, right? Because we want to face those challenges now.
Absolutely.
Before the next census. And when does the next census start? Is it April the 1st?
April 1st, 2020, that is Census Day. We will actually be on the ground prior to that, probably around September of 2019 is actually when we'll start really gearing up again.
April 1st, that's like April Fool's Day, right?
I know.
So now you touched on the vacancies. Could you explain what that is? When you say vacant, does it mean somebody doesn't live there?
Correct. So if you have a housing unit where no one lives there, and what people don't realize is that, okay, I said that, so our master address file is like our check sheet, so we have to have something for each of those housing units before we can say we're done. So traditionally, the way that we've handled our vacant units is we've continued to go back to those units until we verified with someone that yes, this unit is vacant, and then we went back again to make doubly sure, because we did not want to miss any population. So what we're looking for this test is, one, we needed an area that had some vacant units that we could really validate this. Are there administrative records where we could eliminate those visits to those vacant units, whether it's commercial or other government records that, and with everything the Census Bureau does, and we are a bunch of statisticians, we need data to support all the decisions that we're making. So we have to validate this assumption, and that's a big assumption that we're hoping we can validate, that yes, we do have records that are accurate, so we can just go with administrative record instead of repeated visits to the household.
So you're going to send some information through the mail, and then if I get the information, I'm supposed to open it up, and then I'm able to go online, or what other methods do I have besides going online? Can I respond?
We're hoping our primary method will be internet response. However, we know that not everyone is comfortable with that. So they can complete a questionnaire, or they can call the questionnaire assistance line number and complete it over the phone.
Okay.
So 3 different options on how to complete that census questionnaire. We try to make it as simple as possible.
All right, so, and then you talked about, if there is no response, right, then the next course of action, I guess, would be to send someone to the home. And so, Teresa, would you mind just elaborating a bit more on, first of all, the hiring process, right? You said that you actually have to recruit people from the local area to make sure that the people come from it can speak and can interact with those people who live in that area. So could you elaborate on that?
Correct. So we did spend quite a bit of time recruiting from the test area. And
what's quite a bit of time?
Well, we started in October of
Wow.
15.
That is quite a bit of time.
So we had to, inform the community that we were there, that we would be doing the census test, the 2016 test, and let them know about the job and what it is and how much it pays. And so we spent a lot of time just making sure everybody knew we were there. And then we, when they become interested and say, oh, this is a job for me, I'd really like to do this, we'd invite them to come take a test, and they would take an interview or a test, and then we would put them in our database, and we're actually beginning to hire in the area now. So we've actually tested quite a number of people, and we'll be hiring about 650 out of that number to do the non-response follow-up, which is the walking in the neighborhoods and going door to door and knocking and doing the interview at the door.
So when they come door to door, sometimes depending on door-to-door visits from various companies, they'll have shirts or logos or something. Is there anything specific that a census worker will have when they come to the door?
Yeah, so they will have a badge.
Okay.
And I have my badge, so that sort of is sort of what they'll have. It'll have their face on it and their name, and it'll say Census Bureau, and it's a badge that's issued by us. So they'll know, the respondent will know, that they're actually a census worker.
Is there any colored shirt or any type of clothing that they have to wear? Or?
No, they just wear whatever they feel comfortable wearing, and for the neighborhood that they're working in. And there's also a way for them to, if the respondent is at all unsure if this is an actual federal employee, there's a number that they can call to our area census office here in Houston to validate that this person is actually a Census Bureau worker. They'll have a phone, so that's one of the things that we're doing. It's really exciting. We're actually doing the interview using a smartphone. So we'll be knocking on the door. If they didn't respond themselves, we'll be knocking on the door and asking those same questions that we would have asked online in person, and we'll be putting the responses that they give us using a smartphone. So that's kind of an exciting use of technology that the Census Bureau is testing, and we tested it in 15. It worked very well. We're further validating some of our tests now in 16, and it's looking very, very promising.
So some of the problems, I guess, the last time the census was conducted, it was all handwritten, check boxes
Correct.
or circles or something, right? And so I take it that there must have been some sort of errors in reading those. Or how did you process it in the past?
Oh, well, that's a good question. So we did most of the census or this via the paper questionnaire, and if somebody didn't respond, we knocked on the door. But the paper questionnaire is a self-response option, so a person would sit down and fill the questionnaire out. They would send that back to the Census Bureau, and it would go through a data capture process. So we actually had very, very good systems to capture the information that they gave us. And then we also, validate, and as Kathy suggested, we are statisticians, so we make sure that the statistics on the responses that they gave, when we captured it, the data capture in our computers, we went back and looked and validated and make sure that those were the correct responses. So we had a very high degree of confidence that those responses were captured accurately.
Okay. And so now you said 650 people you're going to be hiring, correct? So this must have been an expansive pool of applicants, right?
Of course.
So if I wanted to apply to do this, where would I go? What would I do? What would I need?
Okay, so we were in the community, and we had a phone number that people could call, and we would schedule them for a test. They would go to the test site and fill out an application and a test, and then we would just capture that information in our database.
So you said the test, like, there's a lot of things in the media now about testing and student testing and tests. So is it a difficult test? I mean, what kind of test? Can you elaborate on the test, or is it top secret? Or
it's not top secret. Anybody can take the test. It's a test that asks about their experience, some questions about the interviewing process and things like that. It's not too terribly difficult, so usually most people pass. But what we do, we do have varying levels of answers on the test, and so you can do very, very well, or you cannot. So, and we do our hiring based on those kinds of things,
Okay.
how well you test.
So just ability to obviously communicate and read and capture and take information.
And we also had, if I can interject, we had also a test online, so that somebody could actually go and pre-test and look at the questions and make sure they understand how the test. And so we communicated that to all the applicants, so that if you want to go and take a look at what this test looks like, we sent them to one of our websites, and they went and they just looked at the test, and so they had an opportunity to see what it looked like before they actually.
So when you come into the community, like what avenues or what different organizations do you work with in order to hire workers? I mean, you don't just, it's not like you're just coming in and saying, hey, Census, we need to hire people. So there's got to be a process. Could you explain that?
Well, I mean, that's why we started so early, because we had to make it known why we were there and what we were doing, and who we were hiring and our needs. And that's where Angeles actually helped us out as a partnership outreach effort. And Eduardo was also mentioned, was very influential in just letting the community know, community leaders, homeowners associations, workforce centers, all sorts of people, different people within our test area. Even the county of Houston was informed, and we did a presentation for them, and the city of Houston. We also informed them that we were in the area. So it was just a lot of outreach to let the community know, and then the communities then outreached to their network. and they, they let their people know, hey, look, census is here, we got jobs. So.
So, Angeles, could you kind of further elaborate on that, since that's something that you specialize in? You are the expert.
Oh, I don't know about being the expert, but thank you. Unlike Kathy and Teresa, one of the things that we have in partnership is really we come from a marketing background where we go into the community to do outreach. So we reach out to already established communities, established leadership in the community, and let them know about what is going on in their community and let them be the trusted voices that spread the word in the community and in their circles of influence. We worked with a lot of organizations, from nonprofit organizations, churches. The libraries have been an amazing resource for us to do the actual test. And people can take the test again if they don't pass the test. So there are many opportunities for them to get the job. We work with Goodwill Industries, with Workforce Solutions, with many ethnic groups in nationalities around the community. And hiring those individuals who spoke the language was very important because, again, they let other people in their community know about those jobs and they can come back and apply. So there's a lot of moving parts to this, and there's a lot of work in the community. So we are on the ground, meeting, going to places, going to city council meetings or going to the county, just to let them know and educate them about what we do, and that is even not just the jobs, but furthermore, when it's time to respond to the census questionnaire, that is safe, that is fast, and that is secure, that people do not have to worry about the legal status, because we do not ask the legal status of the community. And also, we're never going to ask your bank account or your social security, so it's pretty safe.
Okay. So when you're going out, and safety obviously is always paramount in any community you go in. And so what steps are you taking or have taken to kind of promote safety, or to ensure that not only are the community is going to be safe, the people that you're going to obtain the information from, but what systems that you do have in place to make sure that the workers, to ensure their safety as well?
Well, we do place a high priority on making sure that people who are employed by the Census Bureau feel safe and are safe in their job. So we do, take precautions to make sure we're going to every household when it's an appropriate time to go. So maybe some places you wouldn't go to after dark, but during the day you'd be just fine. We also, contact the local law enforcement and let them know that we're in the area, and sometimes, if needed, they'll accompany us. But that's usually it's just for if they get calls. Lots of times the law enforcement will get a call and say, somebody's walking around my neighborhood and I don't know who they are and why are they here, and if we contact the local law enforcement, they'll know, and they'll be able to let their communities know that we're in the area. So we do take a lot of steps to just more outreach, let people know what we're doing and why we're there.
So what are the hours that maybe the census may be conducted?
It can vary. But one thing I want to add to what
Sure.
she said is that for the census workers, they all go through a background check.
Okay.
So if there's something that's in their background that would show that it would be a harm to the public, they can't be hired. So that's a big thing for us. So when you talk about the safety of the people that we're visiting, that's how we ensure that happens. Let's see, so you just asked about hours. Okay, so the hours vary. This is kind of interesting too. So it's one of the things that we're going to be testing. Okay, so for the first time ever, since we're using smart devices, we're asking people, when are you available to work? But then we're also in the database of addresses that fall into for the personal visits. We're looking at past data. So we're actually looking when were we successful in the past in these tracts, small geographic areas, reaching people at home. So we're trying to leverage information from our current survey side of the house to make the most of that first visit. So if someone applies and they say, well, I can work from 9 to 1, Well, we may or may not have work for them. It's going to depend based on the area. So in that area, do we generally get people from 9 to 1 or do we not? During our 2015 test, we found that in most cases, people were home from 3 to 8. So those were generally the hours that people worked. Now we do, if they said, I only want to work 9 to 1, we'll call and say, we don't have any cases during that time frame. Do you want to work later in the day? So we give them that option. But that's the first time we've ever done that. With this smart technology, they actually, on their smartphone, will log in at the beginning of each day. They'll download their workload. We'll not only tell them these are the housing units that you're going to go to, but this is the order you're going to visit them in, because we've compiled what is geographically the fastest to get to and who should be home during these hours. So if they don't start their assignment or pick up their assignment, then someone who works for Teresa will be calling to say, hey, are you working today? I show you haven't picked up your assignment. So there's a lot more that technology is helping us to be more efficient, and that's one of the ways that we're doing it.
So you mentioned the smartphones. Is this something that I have to use my own personal phone, or is it provided, or how does that work?
We're actually providing the smartphones for the people that are working for us.
And it comes equipped with the application or the apps that's needed, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So now we talk about, obviously we covered the tests that an applicant would go through to be able to work for the census in the area. Is there any maximum amount of hours they can work?
I don't think we schedule anybody more than 40 hours a week. And they're probably lucky if they get scheduled 40 hours a week. So when you're talking about, so generally, the weekends are our best times.
Best times, right?
So if they don't want to work weekends, they may not get a lot of hours either. So
now what types of questions would, if a census worker came to my house for whatever reason, maybe I didn't get the mail, maybe my wife threw it out with the marketing material. I don't know, but for whatever reason, I didn't receive the initial request.
okay.
And so then someone comes to my door. What should I expect? What kind of questions would they ask me?
Okay. So the first thing we're going to ask you is we're going to verify your address.
Okay.
And then we're going to ask you for the listing of all the people living or staying in this household. We're going to verify that they actually live there, that they don't have another address that they live at more than 50% of the time. We're going to ask what are their relationships to one another, what's their age, race, sex, of their Hispanic origin. We're going to ask for a phone number in case there are questions about the information that we have collected, and verify their mailing address, and we're pretty much done. It's very quick, very easy.
So it's name, age, how many people are living there, right?
Everyone who's living there, their names, their relationship to one another,
Okay.
their sex, race, of their Hispanic origin, did we say age already?
Yes, phone number.
Okay. Their phone number.
Ownership.
Oh, ownership. Do you own or rent your home? That's the one I forgot.
Okay. So now you mentioned you're starting to hire. So you haven't gone out yet, correct?
Correct. So we will start we call it NRFU, Nonresponse Followup.
All right, say that again. Hold on. Acronyms.
NRFU.
NRFU.
We love our acronyms
All
in the government. So it's non-response follow-up. So those respondents who don't respond before online or via the questionnaire, paper questionnaire, will come to the door. We'll start doing that on May 12th. So May 12th is the first day that anybody will see enumerators, we call them, knocking on the door and asking these questions. We do have a few cases, housing units that come out a few days before that, early May, just to do a little tiny testing of the systems to make sure they're working. But it's a very, very small handful of cases, we call them, coming out, I think, May 1st or something like that. So somebody might see somebody at their door May 1st, but the majority of the 600 people plus that we hire will be starting May 12th.
May the 12th. Okay. So how many area codes is how many areas?
15 zip codes.
It's how many?
15 zip codes.
15 zip codes.
Yes.
And so the total, would you happen to know the total population pool
Oh,
in
we're
that
doing
area?
households, so it's 225,000
200
households.
200, I'm sorry, say that again.
225,000 households.
1,000 households
Homes, yes.
in the target area that you're going to sample.
Right. And before we actually go to the community, one of the things that we do within partnership is that we have various activities around the community, the same area, the focus area, what we call response tables. So we actually have our pads, our tablets, where we go out there in the areas, maybe a supermarket. We actually working pretty heavily with Metro, Houston Metro Transportation, to allow us to be in those stops that are in the focus area. So people may not have access to the internet, may not have a computer. Our tablets will be available to them to answer the questionnaire right and then. We'll go to, again, some libraries and some other locations, some parks, special events and things like that. So that, because that's the most cost effective for people to self-respond, because the expensive part is when people go out into the community and knocking on the doors.
So if I get the information in the mail, I can respond at, you said, maybe a metro stop.
We're working with them and perhaps may not be able to do it so quickly for this, but definitely for the future, because all of that what we're doing is planning for the 2020 census. So it's definitely something that could be working in there. But for example, we may be at a temple or a church, various places where we will have staff members with a table and the tablets, and they'll be able to answer it, and we'll give them a nice gift of a string bag.
Yeah, and if you're online, I've posted one of those. I'll make sure I'll tag the census
Oh, good.
so that it comes up. So it's just interesting that, I can be anywhere. So technically, if I do have access to internet, because you were addressing the circumstances if someone did not have
Right.
internet access. So if I get it in the mail and I'm like, oh, I didn't do it at home and I'm on my lunch break, wherever, I want to get on my phone. So I can go online on my phone. Is there an app that's being prepared to do this, or do I have to log in through the website, or how is that working?
If you have your census form, it actually has it on the back.
Okay.
So all you need to do is type this into your smartphone, and it'll take you to the actual website. And there are two things that you can do. So one, on your actual census questionnaire or the notification you received, there's a PIN number that you enter in, and then you can get in and complete your census form. But let's say you are at work and you want to go ahead and complete that census form, then you can still go on the application and enter in your address and complete your information. We call it a non-ID, because what we're going to do is we're going to match your information to what we have in our master address file, because we have your address, I'm sure we do, and we're going to match that population to that address even though you don't have the PIN number with you.
Okay.
So, and that is actually one of the objectives of the test, to see how well we do in matching those up.
So is there an added cost for that?
No.
There's no added cost for that? Okay. So like you touched on it earlier, incorporating some different avenues to expand reaching people, right? So have you reached out in the communities? Could you kind of go into a little bit more detail as some of those different areas you're focusing on to reach people to respond?
Right.
So you mentioned Metro and temples.
The Korean Community Center, the Workforce Solutions, where a lot of people may be going. Lone Star Community College has been incredibly helpful. Also, last weekend, we were at the 99 Ranch Market right outside, and with various of our recruiting assistants who speak the languages, the various Asian languages, so that they be able to communicate with the community. We are going to be at a special event celebrating the Day of the Child at the end of April. We have been Goodwill Industries was another great partner of us. So various organizations that, again, are in the allocation and our focus area, but also that reach out to those other ethnic communities and other groups that are perhaps may not, be getting information on the radio. But also the media outlets have been really helpful. We had a meeting with the Asian media representatives, and they had a lot of different articles in their newspapers and in their television. So it was very helpful to get the word out about, and that was pretty much on the recruiting side. So we've done several interviews. Eduardo has done several interviews on radios and television. So it's been really helpful. That helps a lot because again, it's letting people know to participate, and that is again safe. One of the things that we forgot to tell or mention is that every one of us is sworn to confidentiality and for life. Once we take an oath, we are sworn to maintain all of the information confidential for life.
That's a long time. That's a big commitment.
Let's hope so.
So, obviously, you kind of touched on it early on that, we want to do these things. We want to make sure we get it correct, to make sure we're ready to go live and to get going and smoothly on day one of April 1st, right, of next year. So from the last census, and maybe we touched on it earlier, but I want to make sure we go back and get it. What were some of the things that you learned last time, or problems that you faced last time that you hope to overcome with these tests, and then two, by the time you're ready for the next census?
Okay. So last census, we pretty much did a very traditional census. And when I say that, we did not have an internet option. And that was something that we wanted to have, but it just wasn't the right time and it wasn't cost effective. For this census, a lot of things happened in between the censuses, and now is the right time for us to have an internet option. So that is a big change from 2010 to now.
Okay.
The use of the smartphones, we used it for early operations for our mapping, but we did not use the smartphones when we went back to the households that did not respond and collect their information. And that's something we wanted to do, we just weren't there yet. So for this census, the beauty of the smartphone is not only that we can help direct people where to go and when they should be visiting, but if I go to your home, and let's say you didn't fill it out at work, but you really appreciate the reminder and you want to fill it out yourself on the internet, you can do that now. And the next day, when I get my assignment, your address is no longer going to be on my list because you have responded. That's what we call late mail response. So, and we're able to take that out of sample. In our paper world, we couldn't do that. So in the old world, we gave you your census questionnaires and we called it a binder with all the address list on it. And that's about a week's worth of work. And I turned in a paper payroll on a daily basis and we entered it manually into a computer. But it was too difficult for us to retrieve those questionnaires. Along with that smartphone, we'll be using electronic payroll, which not only allows us to see better cost controls, we'll actually know how much we're spending each day versus it being a week behind on seeing what we've spent. But we're also, for the very first time, going to be able to see, it's like a command center this time. So because you're using the smartphones and people are transmitting, as you complete those cases, then we can get them off the devices, which increases the security of the information that we're collecting. And we can see the case has been completed and it disappears from our screen. We know where our staff is during the day, and we'll know, is that the most cost-effective way, or perhaps if we've been overcharged, we'll actually be able to ask the right questions, because this is taxpayers' money. So we want to make sure we're good stewards of that. So those are some big lessons learned that we have advanced from 2010 till now.
Okay. So, and then we talked about partnerships, but do you subcontract outside of just the general workers, or no? How does that work?
No, for partnership, we do not. We hire people like Ann Halless, who is fantastic. She worked for the Charlotte region in the 2010 census and now works for the Denver region. We actually, in 2000, and what we'll do for 2020, or at least this is the plan, because we're still in the planning phase. It's 2016, so we still have a bit of planning to go. We actually do hire outreach specialists that actually go out into the community, and we don't contract that out. Now, one thing that we do contract out is our communication communications campaign. So during the census, you won't see it for this particular test, but we did have a communications campaign for the 2010 census that we did contract out with, and they're the ones that created all of our commercials and our flyers and various things that we gave out in public.
Okay, all right. So I'm glad that you made that clear. So now that you're rolling out the test, May the 21st?
May 12th
May the
is
12th.
actually when the first enumerators will hit
Okay.
the field.
So now, could you kind of explain a little bit further on the project plan, right? So May 21st, May 12th, and then from there, what's next? What happens next?
So we'll be doing the non-response follow-up, and depending on how big that workload is, so if a lot of people decide that they like this internet option, they were able to do it on their smartphone, and how cool was that? Because they could just go to that website and do it on a tablet or a phone or their computer. Our workload may be larger or smaller depending on how well they do that self-response. So we will then go to the field, and every day we'll have a workload for several hundred enumerators who are going to go out and knock on doors. And each day, obviously, that workload will be less and less and less. We think this is going to take anywhere from 3 to 6 weeks. We're not entirely sure exactly how long, because this internet response, self-response, is a new one for us, and so we're looking to see how many people, if more people are going to respond, do self-response, and that makes our workload for non-response follow-up going into the field, which is the more expensive way to collect this data, lower, which would be ideal. We could save, as Kathy mentioned, the taxpayers' money. So we should be in the field anywhere from, the beginning there of May until the end of May or the beginning of June. So we're probably going to be completely done with our non-response follow-up. I think June 23rd is the last day that we said we would be in the field. So after June 23rd, we'd be done.
I think, Angeles, you said you wanted to maybe comment on something.
One of the things, for example, is what we can continue to hear when we are out there in the community. Last weekend we were also at the Patel Brothers Market, and many of us, although we're not from the area, we come from Denver. We're here a lot. We've been eating a lot of brisket, a lot of different foods. But we also have on loan Eduardo Getty, who is here, who worked in 2010 in partnerships. So it's really nice to have someone who's on the ground in the area and right there.
Yeah, he's waving.
And working, and he knows the community already, speaks Spanish and many other talents that he has. So it's very nice to have people on the ground and not just to come in for a little bit and go away. But one of the things that we keep hearing is that people say, oh, I turned it in, I did it online. It was so easy, and they really, really like it. So it's nice to hear that, and hopefully our workload is much shorter and we can finish up pretty fast and much more effective.
So your schedule is based on a certain percentage response rate, correct?
Correct.
Is it like 60%, 70%?
About 60%. What we're budgeted for, however,
Yes.
is about 60,000 households that we're going to go back and do that non-responsive follow-up for. So if it's higher or lower, we're not going to do more than 60,000 going back to visit the households.
Okay, obviously there's money involved.
Of course.
So now once that's complete, could you carry us on further into the grand scheme of things, right? And all this is to build up to the 2020 census, right? So once the test is complete, you have the information, you've collected the data, now what?
So we actually, for this particular office, again, Teresa said that we're pretty much finished with our non-response follow-up, and we do a few follow-up operations just to make sure test our own quality. And then we'll be out of the field in June, and the office will be closed. Well, we say August. We think it might be a little bit earlier than that. But as soon as that data comes in, they're going to start processing it, and they're going to start comparing it to information that we already have. As I said before about the validating the vacancy rates. So they're going to be looking to compare what did we find on the ground to did we find with administrative records. So that's going to be a big thing that they're going to be comparing. So when are we going to have data for that? I'm going to guess we're going to have something probably by the end of the year or so. It takes us a long time to get through things. As far as the partnership efforts, they're already starting to validate some of the things that Angeles and Eduardo are already doing. So going out to creating these response tables, that was actually their idea, and working with the tablets. So the tablets replace our questionnaire assistance centers that we had before. So that's something that I think we already feel like that should be part of our plan moving forward. Creating that partnership plan they're looking very closely at what these guys are doing and in developing that plan for 2020.
So we do have a call, I believe. So we'll take the call in now.
Yes, my name is Joseph Tiarina, and this is a good subject for me to chime in on. To Angeles, Teresa, and Kathy. I'm a precinct chair, or an election judge and a precinct chair, and if you know what that is, then the presidential election is coming up, and I'll have a lot of people coming in, mostly during that time, and I'm wanting to ask you, have you reached out to the precinct election judges and precinct chairs or the parties to assist you in kind of smoothing things out with the public, to be aware of things and with information or whatever you can do to make it more safer for your employees as well as getting the job done?
That's a great question. Thank you for calling. What was your name again?
Oh, by the way, I want to give my name. My name's Joseph Tiarina, and I want to be a part of this. My precinct is precinct 26, just on the other side of the freeway at U of H. And my phone number, if you have a pen ready, is 832-788-4085, and you can contact me in that way. I know I'm broadcasting it out in free air, so.
I didn't. I was gonna hesitate, but anything to help save tax dollars.
Well, anything to help my fellow Americans too, as well.
Very much so. Very much so. And we appreciate it.
Yes. So if you need me to repeat that.
No, Fiorina, correct?
Yes, Joseph.
Right.
And don't be surprised that Eduardo will be calling you probably before we get to the parking lot.
Well, my wife and I are fixing to leave, and she's getting grouchy because she's really hungry, so I'm gonna have to leave. But I can give you my if you text me, I'll give you my email address as well, and we can communicate that way because I really am energetic. I'm involved in the community, and I can help the census run smoothly and connect you with other people that could benefit everyone.
So twofold, we definitely appreciate the call, and we appreciate all the help and the work that you're doing. So I couldn't say that enough. So thank you.
Great show. Thank you very much. I'll listen now. Bye-bye.
All right. So obviously there you go. You've got a connect there, and it's obviously conversations like this and conversations with the different partnerships to help you. So now to kind of continue on, right? So we've got the non-responses. We've taken care of that. We're moving on. So then what? Could you continue on? So the test is over. And what do we roll into next?
Okay, so next year we actually have 2 tests planned. So for
more tests.
Yes, and what we're doing is we're testing different components of the census.
Okay.
So for this one, it is focused very much on that non-response follow-up part of it and our operation control system. This is a brand new system that we're using just for the second time. It was actually developed in-house, and it really is an amazing group of people who developed this new technology for us. So for a census, geography is the foundation of a census. So what we're going to be testing next year is for address canvassing. So we're going to do what we call in-office and field address canvassing. Every part of the country is going to go through some type of address canvassing. When we talk about incorporating new technology, and this was actually one of the things that we actually used to verify what we saw on the ground in person, is aerial imagery. So can we use aerial imagery? Can we partner with governmental units to make sure that we have all the housing units listed for their particular area and do that in the office versus a very expensive process of having people walk the ground and check all their addresses off, adding and deleting, adding streets. Now in areas where you have high growth, that may not work. But we're hoping that we can reduce that to maybe like 25% of the country where we actually walk the ground to double check. And that's one of our tests for next year. So actually walking the ground in those areas where we have had high growth and making sure that we've added and deleted all the units to make sure our maps are correct. Because how do you find the housing units? I'm actually telling you to go to this GPS unit, and this is where you go for someone who actually does non-response follow-up. The other test that we're doing, and it's not really, well, it could somehow be applicable for here, but not really, is in areas where, so for the Denver region, we have a lot of tribal nations that really have not necessarily street addresses.
Okay.
So how do we do that? So there'll be across the country 2 Native American reservations that we're going to be testing those processes with. And another exciting thing is that we're hoping to test is online recruiting. So that process that Teresa said, where you have to come in person and take a 30-minute test, we're hoping that will not be the case as we go towards 2020. We're hoping I can just refer you to a website and you can complete that at home by yourself, very easy, and you don't have to actually come to a site. So that's going to be another exciting development.
So, is there a way for me now? I mean, we've talked about this a couple of times. A way for me now, if I want to work to help the census, can I go and apply online now, or is that not available to me?
Okay, so the actual recruiting and applying part of this test for the 2016 test actually was completed about 2 weeks ago. So we've actually rolled into the next operation, which is hiring those people that did test for us since October.
So what about the 2020 census?
There are future opportunities.
Yes.
So it just in the cities where we're going to have some tests in 17, there'll definitely be some opportunities. In 18, which Kathy mentioned is the end-to-end test. We don't know or haven't publicized what cities those are yet, but there'll be some opportunities. And of course, 2020 will be employing a large number of people, less than we had in the past because we're becoming more efficient, but it's still going to be quite a large number of people.
So, I'm cheating. I'm looking at the 2020 census life cycle. So I don't expect you to blurb it out because I have it in front of me, but how many tests are there left until go live day, I guess, April the 1st?
I believe there's technically 3,
There's
not
3
counting
tests?
this one.
This one, okay.
So we have an address canvassing test early next year. We have we call it update and enumerate test. That will also be next year, and then our end-to-end test.
So this Harris County test, is there an acronym for it?
No, actually,
We don't.
2016 test.
2016 test. Okay, so 2016 test, and this test again, just to kind of sum it up here, what are we testing in this 2016 test, if we haven't made that clear?
Okay, so the biggest thing is self-response through the internet.
Okay.
And again, Harris County was selected because it's a large metropolitan area with a lot of diversity with languages. It gives us an opportunity for that census questionnaire. You can get it online in 4 different languages. Mm-hmm. So we're testing that part of it out. They can call questionnaire assistance centers, and we have expanded the languages that we can support. So that's one key thing. And then we go into our operational aspects of it, which is our operational control system. We're testing for, in vacant units, can we identify correctly a unit is vacant using administrative records without repeated visits to the household. And then of course we have a brand new management structure where our plan is to have a lot fewer offices than we had during the 2010 census, which is a big cost savings. Why? Because you're going to have smartphones and we'll be able to stay in contact with our staff, which we're not able to do in prior censuses. So we're actually testing out that new management structure. the smartphone element, pulling completed questionnaires after we get out into the field from the enumerators that are in the field, and just the automated routing of how we do our assignments and trying to take advantage of those efficiencies. We wanted that validate from the 2015 test. We really found that we were much more efficient in how we did the work. Was that a fluke or is that real? And what type of efficiencies can we plan in our budget as we move towards 2020? Is it really going to cost what we think it's going to cost, or have we really found those efficiencies?
So 2016, that's the test you just talked about. 2017, the next test will cover.
The 2017 test, there's an address canvassing where we actually walk and create that address list. There's an update enumerate on 2 reservations in the nation, validating our operations, how we're going to actually go back to addresses that generally do not have street addresses, and then end-to-end test beginning in 2018.
End-to-end. So we only have a few minutes, so I won't start and ask you to go end-to-end, but I do want to say thank you for all of you. We really do appreciate it, and thank you to the caller for calling in. This has been informative for me because, like, when I first started, I said, the census, what did they do, right? We just count people every 10 years, and then what do you do in between? So now, hopefully, our viewers and everyone here know that there's a lot that goes on between the next cycle, and there's always something new. They're always trying to improve. So I want to thank Angeles. Thank you, Teresa and Kathy, for flying in Denver. We hope you enjoy the weather here and the food, obviously, right? We want to thank the viewers at home, and we want to thank the caller again. My name is Quentin Wiltz with this week's edition of Public Access Public Affairs. We thank you for the opportunity to join us and share with us, and we'll see you next time.